In this video, we will learn how to use Adobe Audition for voice recording and editing. By the end of this video, you'll know how to go from a blank screen to a professional-sounding voice recording in Adobe Audition, covering everything from mic setup to the final export. You can find chapter markers below if you want to skip ahead. At first, I will talk about the Adobe Audition interface in general. The interface looks intimidating for beginners, and most beginners are afraid of accidentally breaking the interface. For example, you can see the Essential Sound panel on the right side. I can click on these three lines and close the panel. I have closed the panel, and it is gone. How can you go back to the previous interface? It is simple. Go to Window, Workspace, and click Reset to Saved Layout. I will click on that, and you will see that the interface will be the same as before. The Essential Sound panel is back. This is just one example. If you mess up the layout, you can go back to the default interface the way I just showed you. This concept is called Workspace, and you can see that there are different workspaces at the top. Right now, we're in the default workspace. You can see it's highlighted in blue. Usually I work with the Master Editor workspace, which is a different layout because in this layout, I can see more of the waveform. If you are interested in knowing more about workspaces, you can watch this video. I will give the link to that video in the description. Let's now turn our focus to how to record audio or voice. Recording audio is simple. You just click on the red record button. Before you hit that record button, you need to make sure you're using the correct microphone. It is a very common issue for beginners to record audio with the wrong microphone, so it is extremely important to get into the habit of selecting the correct microphone before recording. To check this on Mac, go to the Settings, Audio Hardware. If you are using Windows, you will see the Preferences under the Edit menu. Here you'll see your default input. This is the device Adobe Audition will record from. For me, the Scarlett 2i2 USB has been selected. Click the drop-down to see all available input devices. I'm using a USB audio interface, Scarlett 2i2, so I have the correct one selected as the microphone. Choose whichever microphone or interface you're using, then click OK. If you do not see your microphone on the list, please close Adobe Audition and open again. In extreme cases, you may need to restart your computer, but usually you will see your microphone in the list after connecting to your computer. Don't worry about the other settings for now. Just make sure the right microphone is selected. A quick note, if you are looking to use Adobe Audition for voiceover demos, auditions, or producing audiobooks, you can look into this Adobe Audition bundle. This Adobe Audition bundle has everything you need to succeed in voiceover or audiobook production using Adobe Audition. More about this bundle later. Let's get back to the tutorial. As the correct microphone is now selected, you are ready for recording. Now, before you actually start recording, there's one crucial step: checking your audio levels. You'll see a level meter in the interface. Double-click on it, and you will see the current audio levels. As you speak into your microphone, you want the meter to hit somewhere between -18 decibels and -6 decibels. That's the sweet spot. It means you're capturing clear, strong audio without any risk of distortion. If you look closely at the meter, you'll notice it turns red when it gets close to 0 decibels. That's the danger zone. If you record in that red zone, you risk clipping, which causes a harsh, distorted sound that can't be fixed in post-production. So adjust either your microphone's gain knob or the distance you're speaking from the microphone until you're comfortably in that -18 to -6 decibel range. Even if you're not perfectly in that range, the most important thing is to speak at the right distance from your microphone. Other issues can often be corrected later. Though the most important thing is to talk to the microphone from the correct distance, getting good levels from the start is always a great habit to build. It makes the latter part of audio editing and processing easier. Double-clicking the meter will turn off the level display. Now we're ready to record. Click the red record button. When you click it, Adobe Audition will prompt you to create a new audio file. The first option is the file name. You can leave it as untitled for now. It doesn't matter whether you name the file at this point or later. You can always rename it afterward. Below that, you'll see 3 important settings: sample rate, channels, and bit depth. I'll be using the default options here, and honestly, I strongly recommend you do the same, unless you have a specific reason to change them. For voiceover, these default values work completely fine. A lot of people watch various YouTube videos and come away with the wrong idea about these settings. So let me clear this up once and for all. Sample rate should be set to 44.1 kHz. This is the industry standard for voiceover work. Most voiceover platforms accept it, and many audiobook platforms actually require it. If you don't have a specific reason to use a different sample rate, don't change it. Channels should be set to mono. For voiceover, mono is always preferred. If you record in stereo, you risk running into unnecessary complications, like audio appearing only on one side of the headphones. Mono keeps things clean, simple, and professional. Bit depth should be set to 32-bit float. This gives your audio more headroom, meaning your recording is much less likely to distort even if your levels run a little hot. There's no downside to keeping it here, so leave it as is. Once everything looks good, click OK. Audition will now show you the waveform, and as you speak, you'll see it being drawn in real time. This waveform is what we'll be working with throughout the editing process, so it's important to understand how to read and manipulate it. We'll get into that in the next sections. When you're done recording, simply click the stop button, and you will see the entire waveform of your recording. Alright, so as soon as I finish recording, you'll notice something interesting happening here. The background behind the waveform has turned white. Now what does that mean? It simply means that this portion of the audio is selected. Think of it like highlighting text in a Word document. When you highlight it, it changes color. Same idea here. Now, audio selection is actually a pretty important concept in Adobe Audition, and we'll use it a lot as we go deeper into editing. But for now, just understand the basics. Watch this. If I just single-click anywhere inside the waveform area, it becomes unselected, and the background goes back to its normal color. And if I double-click it, the entire waveform gets selected again, and boom, the background turns white. Simple, right? You don't need to stress about this right now. Just keep it in the back of your mind so that the next time you see a white background, you know exactly what's happening. Your audio is selected. That's all it is. Okay, now let's talk about something really important, saving your recording. Before you do any editing or processing, always, and I mean always, save a raw, untouched version of your recording first. Why? Because if something goes wrong during editing, you'll always have that original clean file to come back to. It's your safety net. So let's do that now. In Adobe Audition, there are two main ways to save your audio file: save and export. Understanding the difference between these two is very important, especially when you need to manage multiple versions of the same recording. Let's start with save. If you have just recorded audio and it has never been saved before, clicking save will create a new file on your computer. But if you are already working on an existing audio file and you click save, the changes you made will become permanent, meaning the original version will be overwritten. Now, export works differently. Export is used when you want to keep the original file unchanged, but also save a new version with your edits. So think of export as saving a separate copy. Now let me show you how this works in practice. Go to File and click Save. Adobe Audition will ask you to choose a location and give your file a name. I will name this file Test1, then click Browse to choose where to save it. I will create a new folder and name it Raw. This folder will hold my original unedited recording. Please note that you can use any kind of folder structure you want. I'm just trying to follow a structure where I can manage the raw and edited versions of the files easily, but it is up to you what kind of folder structure you would like to use. Next, choose your file format. The two most common formats are WAV and MP3. WAV is uncompressed, meaning no audio quality is lost. MP3 is compressed, which is great for final delivery, like uploading to a website. But for raw recordings, always use WAV. When you are editing your files, passing a file to someone for edits, getting it back, or moving your audio file between different software, it is always good to save it as a WAV. Also, the raw version of the file should always be saved as a WAV so you get all the audio data as it is. I will keep the remaining settings as it is. I will click OK, and the file will be saved. The audio file is now saved. To verify it has been saved successfully, I will close Adobe Audition and reopen it. I will go to the folder where I saved the file. You can see test1.wav inside the raw folder. You may also notice a file with a .pkf extension. You do not need to worry about this. It is just metadata used by Adobe Audition internally. When sharing audio files with others, only send the WAV file, not the PKF. I will drag test1.wav into Adobe Audition. The test1.wav is inside Adobe Audition now. If I double-click it, you will see the recording's waveform appear. Now let me show you when to use export. Say you delete a part of the audio. To delete, select the part of the waveform by dragging and then hit delete on the keyboard. I will delete the selected part. You will notice a small asterisk symbol appearing next to the file name. This means there are unsaved changes. If you click Save Now, those changes will permanently overwrite your original file. To avoid that, use Export instead. Go to File, click Export, then File. The same dialog box that appeared during the save process will now appear for exporting as well. All the settings are similar, so you should already be familiar with them. Notice that the software has automatically assigned a new file name for the exported file. I am going to keep this file name as it is, but I will choose a custom location to save it. I will click on Browse and navigate to the folder where I previously saved the raw version of this file. Inside that raw folder, I will create a new folder and name it Edited. This way, the original file and the processed file will be stored in separate locations, making it easy to tell them apart. Now, you do not need to follow the exact same folder structure that I am using here. Feel free to organize your files in whatever way works best for you. However, it is always a good practice to keep your raw version and your processed version in separate folders, so you never mix them up and you can always go back to the original when needed. I will now select the edited folder as the export destination. All the remaining settings will stay as they are, and I will save the file in the WAV format. I will click OK to export. The file has now been exported successfully. Let me verify by checking the save location. Inside the raw folder, we can see the original file. This is the unedited version, and inside the edited folder, we can see the newly exported file. This is the version with our changes applied. So now we have two separate versions of the same audio, one original and one edited. Let me bring this exported file into Adobe Audition. I will simply drag it into the Adobe Audition interface. The file is now loaded, and I can double-click on it to view its waveform. At the moment, both waveforms may look identical. That is because the changes I made to the original test.wav file have not been undone yet in Adobe Audition. You will notice there is an asterisk next to the file name, which means there are unsaved changes. I will undo those changes now. After undoing, you can see the waveform of the original recording. Now, if I switch back and forth between the original file and the exported file, you can clearly see the difference in their waveforms. The exported file does not have the beginning section because that is the part I deleted before exporting. And that is how saving and exporting work in Adobe Audition, allowing you to keep a clean original while preserving a separate edited copy. I encourage you to practice this workflow and give yourself time to get comfortable with managing different versions of your audio files. And one final reminder, always save your raw, unedited audio in the WAV format. This ensures the highest quality and provides a reliable backup you can return to whenever you need it. So that covers the basics of setting up Adobe Audition, recording your voiceover, and managing your files properly. In the next part of this video, we're going to get into the fun stuff, how to actually edit and process your audio, removing background noise, adjusting levels, cleaning up mistakes, and more. If you're learning Adobe Audition specifically for voiceover, audiobooks, or podcasting, I also have a full Adobe Audition course available. It goes much deeper into everything we're covering here. The Adobe Audition bundle includes not just a course, but some pre-built presets to make your sound better, richer, and cleaner. You will also get a custom EQ and preset that suits your voice and your recording setup. Many people progress in the wrong direction in audio editing. This custom EQ includes the necessary feedback to help you succeed in voiceover and audiobook with Adobe Audition. The link to the Adobe Audition bundle is in the description and pinned comment. Now we are going to cover the fundamentals of navigating and editing audio using the waveform editor. We will go through everything step by step, so by the end of this section, you will feel comfortable working inside the waveform view and making basic editing decisions with confidence. Once you have finished recording your audio and saved your file, you will be working directly inside the waveform editor. This is the central workspace where all of your editing takes place. Everything you do, selecting audio, deleting unwanted sections, copying parts, adjusting playback, all of it happens right here in this view. Now, one important thing to understand from the very beginning is that you do not always need to play back your audio to make editing decisions. Sometimes you can simply look at the shape of the waveform and read its values visually to understand what is happening in the audio. This skill becomes very useful as you get more experienced with audio editing, and we will talk more about how to do that shortly. The waveform is a visual representation of your audio. Every peak, valley, and flat section you see in the waveform corresponds directly to the sound in your recording. Taller peaks mean the audio is louder at that point, Flatter or thinner sections mean the audio is quieter or even silent. When you first open your recorded file, you will see the entire recording displayed across the screen. For example, in this tutorial, the recording is approximately 30 seconds long, and the full 30 seconds is shown across the width of the waveform editor. The playhead. You will notice a red vertical line sitting somewhere in the waveform. This red line is called the playhead. The playhead marks the exact position in your audio where playback will begin when you press play. You can move the playhead to any position simply by clicking anywhere on the waveform. The red line will jump to wherever you click, and playback will start from that point. This is very useful when you want to listen to a specific section of your audio without having to play from the very beginning every time. Playing your audio. To start playing your audio, you have two options. You can press the space bar on your keyboard, which is the quickest and most convenient way, or you can click the play button located here. Either way, playback will begin from the current position of the playhead. To stop playback, simply press the space bar again, or click the stop button in the toolbar.
Don't hesitate. Closer. Almost. Sharper.
Selecting audio. To select a section of audio, click and hold your mouse button at the starting point of the section you want to select. Then drag your mouse to the right until you reach the end of the section. As you drag, you will see the background of the selected area become highlighted or shaded. This highlighted region is your selection, and any editing action you perform will apply only to this selected section. Deleting audio. Editing a waveform is very similar to editing a text document. Once you have a section selected, you can delete it simply by pressing the delete key on your keyboard. The selected section will be removed, and the remaining audio on either side will close the gap automatically. This is one of the most common editing actions you will use. For example, if you recorded a long pause, a cough, a mistake, or any unwanted sound, you simply select that section and delete it. Undoing actions. If you accidentally delete the wrong section, or if you change your mind about an edit, you can easily undo your last action. On Windows, press Ctrl-Z. On Mac, press Command-Z. You can also go to the Edit menu at the top and click Undo from the drop-down list. The deleted section will be restored exactly as it was before. Zooming in and out of the waveform. When you are looking at the full recording, some sections may appear very small and difficult to work with precisely. To zoom in and get a closer look at a specific part of the waveform, you can use the zoom slider. Drag the zoom slider to increase the zoom level, which will expand the waveform horizontally so you can see more detail. You can then scroll left or right to navigate to the specific section you want to examine or edit. This is especially useful when you need to make very precise selections. For example, removing a very short click or noise without affecting the audio around it. We will learn such techniques eventually. When you want to return to the full recording view, click the Zoom Out Full icon in the toolbar. This will instantly zoom out so that the entire recording fits on the screen again. Understanding audio levels by reading the waveform. One of the most valuable skills in audio editing is being able to read the loudness of your audio visually, just by looking at the waveform. On the right side of the waveform editor, you will see a set of numbers. These numbers represent decibel levels, written as decibels. Decibels are the unit used to measure the loudness of audio. Here is how to read the levels. Look at a particular section of the waveform and find its highest peak, the tallest point of the waveform in that section. Now, draw an imaginary horizontal line from that peak across to the decibel numbers on the right side of the screen. The number that your imaginary line lands on tells you approximately how loud that section of audio is. For example, if the peak of a section lines up with -3 decibels on the right side, that section will touch -3 decibels in the meter while we play it.
Don't hesitate.
If the peak only reaches up to -12 decibels, then that section will only reach that point in the meter.
Let go. Let go.
Being able to read levels visually like this will help you make faster and smarter editing decisions, especially when you are working on longer recordings. Loop playback. Sometimes when you are editing a specific section, you will want to play it back repeatedly without having to press play over and over again. This is where the loop playback feature comes in handy. To activate loop playback, click the loop icon in the toolbar. When the loop is enabled, the icon will turn blue, indicating that it is active. Now, when you select a section of audio and press play, that section will play continuously in a loop until you stop it.
Let go. Let go. Let go.
This is very useful when you are fine-tuning an edit and want to hear the same section multiple times to judge whether it sounds natural and clean. To disable loop playback, simply click the loop icon again. It will return to its default inactive state, and audio will play normally without looping. Spectral frequency display. Now let us look at a slightly more advanced feature called the spectral frequency display. By default, the editor shows your audio as a standard waveform, but you can switch to the spectral view to see a different kind of visualization. To enable the spectral display, click the button labeled Show Spectral Frequency Display in the toolbar. Once you have enabled the spectral frequency display, you will notice a vibrant, colorful map appearing beneath the waveform view. This visual representation illustrates the frequency distribution of your recording, allowing you to see lower frequencies residing at the bottom and higher frequencies at the top. The colors in the spectral display represent loudness at each frequency. Brighter and lighter colors mean that frequency is loud and active at that moment. Dark areas or black areas represent silence or very quiet frequencies. If you map these carefully to the waveform, you will see colors where there are talking parts in the waveform. When there is silence or a pause, the display will appear mostly dark. One particularly useful thing about the spectral display is that it can reveal background noise. Even during moments when no one is speaking, you may notice faint colors appearing at the bottom of the display. This indicates that there is some low-level noise present in the recording, perhaps a hum from equipment, air conditioning, or room ambiance. This kind of information is very useful for advanced editing tasks like noise removal. For everyday editing tasks, you will mostly work with the standard waveform view. But knowing how to use the spectral display gives you a powerful additional tool for diagnosing and fixing audio problems. You can toggle the spectral display on and off at any time simply by clicking the icon in the toolbar. Copying and pasting audio. Just like in a text editor, you can copy and paste sections of audio within the waveform editor. This is useful in many situations. For example, if you need to duplicate a section of audio, or if you need to insert a period of silence in a specific spot. To copy a section, first select it by clicking and dragging. Then press Ctrl-C on Windows or Command-C on Mac to copy the selection. Next, click on the position in the waveform where you want to paste the copied audio. Then press Ctrl-V on Windows or Command-V on Mac. You can also go to the Edit menu and click Paste from the drop-down. The copied audio will be inserted at the position you selected. You will see the pasted section appear in the waveform at that exact point. The Edit History panel. Every single action you perform in the editor is automatically tracked in the History panel. You can open the History panel to see a full list of every edit you have made during the current session, including deletions, pastes, undos, and any other changes. You can navigate through this history to step backwards or forwards through your edits. The marker pointing to an action is your current state of the waveform. So if you want to go back to a previous edit point to check how things were, you can click and check that. The later edits from that point will be inactive. You can get back to the latest edit point by clicking on it. However, there is one very important thing to keep in mind. The edit history only exists during your current working session. If you close the file and reopen it later, the history will be completely cleared. So if there are any edits you are unsure about, make sure to review them before closing the file. You have now learned all the essential navigation and editing tools in the waveform editor. You know how to select and delete audio, how to undo your actions, how to zoom in and out, how to read audio levels visually from the waveform, how to use loop playback, how to toggle the spectral frequency display, how to copy and paste audio, and how to use the Edit History panel. Before moving on, take a few minutes to practice everything you have learned in this section. The more you practice these basic tools, the more natural and efficient your editing workflow will become. Once you feel comfortable with all of these fundamentals, you are ready to move on to the next section. In the next section, we are going to start working with audio effects. Audio effects are what take your raw, recorded audio and transform it into something that sounds polished, professional, and broadcast ready. Whether you are producing a podcast, recording a voiceover, creating an audiobook, or publishing videos on YouTube, applying the right audio effects to your recording is absolutely essential. It is the difference between audio that sounds amateur and audio that sounds like it was produced in a professional studio. If you want professional, high-quality audio in Adobe Audition, you don't need to master every effect. You just need to master the right ones, starting with Normalize. If you go to the Effects menu, you'll see many effects available inside Audition. These effects are grouped by the type of work they do, for example, amplitude and compression, noise reduction and restoration, filter and EQ, and so on. As you can see, there are many effects in this area. But we don't need to learn all of these effects to get started. We only need to learn a few specific effects first, understand how to process audio using them, and from there we can gradually explore the rest. The normalize effect. The first effect you need to master is the normalize effect. If you go to amplitude and compression, you'll see an effect called normalize. Now, if I click on the normalize effect, you'll notice that the background of the waveform has turned white. That means the audio has been automatically selected. In Audition, if you don't select any part of the audio and apply an effect, by default, that effect assumes you want to apply it to the entire waveform, so it selects everything automatically. Let's try to understand the normalize settings. Inside the normalize effect, there are two options, percentage and decibels. In modern audio work, we don't use percentage, we only use decibels. When decibels is selected, you'll see it shows 0.0. Now why 0? Take a look at the meter. 0 is the maximum. Through normalize, we're actually setting the peak level, or the loudest point of the audio. So it's important to understand what peak means in audio. Peak refers to the loudest point of your audio, the point where the volume is at its highest. Through normalize, we set what this peak will be. You can't set this value higher than 0. If I try to set it to something like 1 and click outside, you'll see it automatically goes back to 0 because 0 is the maximum on the meter. Audio cannot be louder than 0 decibels. So we have to use negative values, for example, -1 or -3. I can either type the value directly or drag the slider to adjust it. In short, you can say normalize effect sets the peak level of the audio. So it is important to understand what the peak really is. You can also read or guess the peak from the waveform. Before I apply the normalize effect, I want to show you something else. I'll close this without applying. On the right side of the waveform, you can see the audio levels labeled in decibels. If I draw an imaginary line through the waveform, I can estimate the loudest point, the peak. You have to consider both the top and the bottom of the waveform. The highest point in either direction is the peak. Looking at this waveform, the peak appears to be somewhere close to -12 decibels. That's one way to visually understand the peak of an audio file. Since normalize adjusts the peak, it's important to know your current peak and what will happen when you set a new one. There is another way to find the peak level using a tool called amplitude statistics. Using amplitude statistics, you will get the exact peak value. To find the peak, go to Window, Amplitude Statistics, and click Scan. You'll see the peak shows as -12.78 decibels, confirming what we estimated visually. If I play any part of this audio and watch the meter, you'll see it barely crosses -12 decibels.
With a lifetime guarantee against breakage to back it up. Wait, cutting surface.
You could see that the audio level has not crossed -12 in the meter, so if I now set the peak to -3, my waveform will stretch up to -3. Let me demonstrate what happens after applying normalize. I'll go to Effects, Amplitude and Compression, Normalize, and set it to -3. Why -3? I'll explain that a bit later. Once applied, you can see the waveform has grown in height and the peak is now touching -3. We can verify this in Amplitude Statistics. After scanning, the peak amplitude now reads -3 decibels. This is how you set the peak amplitude of the audio using the normalize effect. The audio has now become louder because the waveform has grown taller. If I play this back, you'll hear it's louder than before.
Some people claim that all aerators are created equal. Well, we beg to differ. With a lifetime guarantee against breakage to back it up. Wait, cutting surface.
Important note about normalize. Keep in mind, normalize doesn't always increase the volume. If your audio already has a higher peak and you normalize it to a lower value, the volume will actually decrease. Basically, normalize makes your loudest point hit a specific level and the rest of your audio also gets adjusted accordingly. Now there's actually an easier way to apply normalization. Instead of going through the effects menu, if you go to Favorites, you'll see two normalize options. Normalize to -3 decibels and normalize to -0.1 decibels. Favorites are essentially shortcuts to effects. It's like having normalize preset to -3, ready to apply with one click. So watch this. I just clicked normalize to -3 decibels from favorites, and the audio is normalized to -3 instantly. Why normalize first? It's important to apply normalize as your first effect, because that gives you a true idea of your recording quality. When you record, the volume might be on the lower side. By normalizing first, you'll be able to better understand the noise level, identify problems in the audio, and get a real sense of how the recording actually sounds. Normalize isn't the only effect you'll need to apply for high-quality audio. There are other effects too, and they need to be applied in a specific order. If your voice recording has background noise, Adobe Audition can help you clean it up. I've directly helped more than 100 voiceover artists and audiobook narrators process their audio in Adobe Audition. I'll now show you what kind of noise Adobe Audition can actually remove, how to reduce noise without damaging the voice, and when you may need a better tool beyond Audition. The goal is to reduce the noise while keeping the voice natural. In audio processing, the first step is normalize, and the next step is noise reduction. You can see that Adobe Audition has a bunch of noise reduction effects. Though there are many options, in practice we use either denoise or adaptive noise reduction. We will first look into the denoise. However, you should set your expectations right around noise reduction. Noise reduction can significantly degrade audio quality if not done correctly. Also, it is not possible to remove every type of noise from the audio. If you have irregular background noise like dog barking or traffic, you cannot reduce it significantly. If you are looking for professional-grade audio, you must have to record without any irregular background noise. There is no exception to that. However, besides irregular background noise, there is another type of noise called white noise or hissing noise. This hissing noise can be reduced to some extent using Adobe Audition's noise reduction effects. If the hissing noise is too loud, then once again, it will affect the audio quality. Your recording should have as little hissing noise as possible. To capture as little hissing noise as possible, you have to set your recording environment properly. Still, some white noise or hissing noise will make its way into the recording. You have to reduce that noise to an acceptable level using noise reduction. We will use the denoise. Denoise is easy to use and effectively reduces hissing noise. You can now see the configuration window for denoise. There is an amount slider through which you set the noise reduction percentage. You may think I can set it as high as possible to reduce more noise, but that is not practically possible. The higher you set the amount, the more noise will be reduced. However, that will make the voice harsh, thin, and hollow. Because noise reduction introduces a gap in the audio data. The bigger the gap, the poorer the audio quality becomes. So you have to choose an optimal amount. I suggest setting the amount below 40%. On average, a value around 30 to 40% will do a satisfactory job. If you do not get satisfactory noise reduction even at 40%, that means your recording environment is not set properly, and the recording environment needs some improvement. There is also another configuration for processing focus. If you know which frequency area is causing the noise, you can set the focus on that frequency area. I am using the first option, the flat line, meaning the denoise will be active on the whole frequency area. Using other options as a processing focus requires an understanding of frequency and advanced audio editing knowledge. I will skip that discussion for now. I will now play the audio and adjust the amount. Notice on the level meter how it changes. I will also toggle the effect on and off to understand the difference.
Some people claim that all aerators are created equal. Well, we beg to differ. Ranchworks Pastor aerators are engineered with forged wrench tech blades designed to penetrate deeper and aerate more effectively than any other aerator on the market, with a lifetime guarantee against breakage to back it up. Weight, cutting surface, and speed.
During the talking parts, the change is not that clearly visible. I will select a noise-only part and toggle the effect on and off. I will use another sample for this test, because this audio has very little noise. The sample I just opened has more noise than before. Let's do the same experiment here.
Christmas celebrates a coming, an arrival, an advent. Christmas celebrates a coming. Christmas celebrates a coming, an arrival, an advent. Christmas celebrates God showing up, not showing off with angel-driven chariots or Magic Kingdom fireworks, but showing up on a donkey.
If you listen through headphones in a quiet space, you notice the changes with denoise. You have to experiment with this same thing with your own audio. However, if you had to set the amount to more than 40%, your audio quality would significantly degrade. Do this experiment with your recording and let me know in the comments what percentage worked for your audio. When you are happy with the settings, you can apply them. This was denoise. As I said, there are other options, and sometimes the adaptive noise reduction works better. Adaptive noise reduction requires more processing power in the computer. If denoise is not giving a satisfactory result, you can try with adaptive noise reduction. If you want the best result for noise reduction, you have to go beyond Adobe Audition's noise reduction. You have to choose from third-party plugins like Waves Clarity VX, Supertone Clear, Isotope RX, etc. Different recordings have different types of noise, and some plugins may work better on your audio. It is a matter of experiment and judgment. For this Adobe Audition only tutorial, I am not going into the details of those plugins. If you want to know more details about the third-party plugins, you can watch this video. I will add a link to this video in the description. If you want a full tutorial with all the steps, please check this card on the screen. It has all the necessary steps with proper configuration. So in audio processing, the first step is normalize, and the next step is noise reduction.